Chapter 442. Gu Xingyin and the little fatty became deskmates. Hello, Qingqing. My name is Zhang Susu. When the little fatty saw that the most beautiful girl in the class had become his deskmate, he smiled so widely that his eyes narrowed, revealing his big white teeth. Hello. Gu Xingyin greeted him. The little fatty took out a lot of snacks from his bag and placed them on the big table. Come, Qingqing. I'll treat you to something. This was his favorite thing. Qingqing was really too cute. Otherwise, he wouldn't bear to share it with her. Gu Xingyin looked at the pile of snacks and then glanced at the little fatty. She knew in her heart how he got his body shape. She chose the smallest one and held it in her hand. Thank you. The little fatty frowned and grabbed 2 handfuls of chocolate and put it in her hand. More. The one you took is not enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. Gu Xingyin. This deskmate was too enthusiastic. She didn't know that the little fatty's mind was full of what his hooligan father had said to him. Son, Dad told you, this relationship has to start from a young age. Dad told you, when you enter the school and see the most beautiful girl, you must not be stingy. You must be serious about your relationship. Now you have to prepare early, don't you? Although his father was picked up by his mother and swept aside before he could finish his words, the little fatty remembered these words in his heart. Qingqing was the most beautiful girl in the class. No, Qingqing was the most beautiful girl among all the girls he had ever seen. Listen to Dad and treat her well. When you grow up, marry her and make her your wife. Gu Xingyin didn't know what the little fatty beside her was thinking. She was waiting for Su Qing's arrival. That's right, Su Qing would also be attending the school and this class. Soon, the person she was waiting for arrived. Compared to Su Qing's dressing was much more proper. Her hair was tied into a ponytail. She wore a sky blue overalls and carried a denim bag. She was also a pink and cute little girl. Gu Xingyin waited for her to introduce herself. Hello everyone, I'm Su Qing. Please call me Qing. As Gu Xingyin had expected, Su Qing also asked people to call her Qing. In the original plot, Su Qing had a very bad temper at that time. When she introduced herself to the class, she gave a random name. Later, when Su Qing entered the class, she asked others to call her Qing. Everyone tacitly acknowledged Su Qing as Qing. Su Qing was just the cold Su Qing. After Su Qing introduced herself, the expected welcoming scene did not appear. At the end of the day, she was still a 13-year-old girl. Encountering such a situation, she was completely dumbfounded. She looked blankly at her homeroom teacher who was standing at the side. Only then did the form teacher remember that there was still Qing in the class. Before she could say anything, Zhang Susu, who was sitting beside Gu Xingyin, pointed at Gu Xingyin and shouted, "There's already a Qing in our class." Gu Xingyin, well done. Su Qing's gaze followed and landed on Gu Xingyin. At first glance, she was stunned by the doll's exquisite appearance, which was like that of a TV drama. The little girl's innate competitive mentality made her very unhappy. Under everyone's gaze, Su Qing's eyes suddenly turned red. But my family calls me Qing. She looked at Su Qing eagerly, as if hoping that she would say something. Chapter 443. Gu Xingyin saw the look in Su Qing's eyes. She knew what Su Qing wanted. Su Qing looked gentle on the surface, but deep down, she was more selfish and domineering than anyone else. She would never allow anyone else to have what belonged to her. She wanted Gu Xingyin to relent. Gu Xingyin had specially come early today. How could she let Su Qing have her way? Coincidentally, Su Qing was better at acting coquettishly and crying than anyone else in this lifetime. Gu Xingyin saw that everyone was looking at her because of Su Qing's words, and she seemed to be at a loss. Everyone saw that the delicate little girl's delicate little nose twitched, and tears rolled down from her eyes without any warning. Gu Xingyin, who would cry at the slightest disagreement, said while sniffling, "I am Qing. If others are called Qing, then who am I?" Her long eyelashes were stained with tears. She did not look at anyone else, but lowered her eyes and sniffled. The little fatty, Zhang Susu, seemed to be frightened. He did not even care about the snacks he was eating, and sat at the side anxiously. People's minds were biased. The first person he met was Su Keqing. Su Keqing's appearance was more exquisite and cute than Su Qing's. Now that Su Qing was crying because of Su Qing, he had a deep dislike for this new classmate of Su Qing's. Su Qing seemed to be a little confused. She even held back the tears that were about to fall. She had probably never seen such a delicate little girl. Tears came at the drop of a hat. The homeroom teacher was having a headache. Su Keqing's background was said to be very powerful. When her parents brought her to the school, it was the principal who personally brought her to the class. Although the principal did not say it explicitly, he had said a few words about it. What he meant was that Su Keqing's background was very powerful, and if she was in the class, she should take good care of her and so on. It was only the first day, and she had already made someone cry. This was really, the child who cries gets candy. This was indeed a famous saying. In the end, Su Keqing became Qingqing, and Su Qing became Haruko. Gu Shengyin was quite satisfied with the final outcome. When He Junyan came to pick her up in the afternoon, she didn't say much. But at night he still found out about what had happened in class during the day. He came to the little girl's room, pinched her little nose, and sighed, "So delicate, you can't bear the slightest grievance. Have I spoiled you?" Gu Shengyin slapped his big hand away unhappily and pouted. "Love is Uncle He's love. Don't give it to others." He Junyan's heart melted at her words. Sensing the change in his mentality, he finally knew where the little girl's squeamishness came from. It was clearly because he spoiled her. Fine. He Junyan seemed to have accepted his fate. After all, Uncle He will always be there to protect you. So what if my Qingqing is a little spoiled? My little princess Qingqing, no matter how spoiled and domineering she is, it doesn't matter. Moreover, her Qingqing had always been so obedient. So where are your principles? Where's your bottom line? All right, Uncle He, I made a good friend in school today. Gu Shengyin tried her best to act as a little girl who was presenting a treasure to an adult. She excitedly introduced her new friend, Zhang Susu, to He Junyan. At this moment, He Junyan's mood was not so good. That little fatty must be up to no good. He learned how to seduce girls at such a young age. He didn't learn well at all. Qingqing, listen to Uncle. In school, you have to keep a distance from the boys. Good girls will not play close to boys. He Junyan spouted nonsense with a straight face. Chapter 444. Gu Shengyin was laughing in her heart, but on the surface, she looked puzzled. Why, Uncle He, Teacher Xiao Xiao said that we should love each other. He Junyan smiled gently. Good girl, Qingqing. Your teacher means not to throw a tantrum in school, and to be generous and sincere to others. You still have to keep a distance. Gu Shengyin stopped teasing him and nodded obediently. Gu Shengyin's junior high school life went smoothly. She was good-looking, had good grades, and was especially generous to her classmates. Although she was a little arrogant, coupled with her exquisite face, everyone just thought that she had a straightforward personality. Su Qing was not so happy. Although their names differed by only one word, Su Keqing was better than her in every aspect. Even the people she knew from other classes knew that there was a particularly famous Su Keqing in Class 1. Some even mistook her for Su Keqing. The thing that made her the most unhappy was that Su Keqing alone got 80% of the votes in the class committee election. Although she was second, the gap was too big. If that was the case, then so be it. But Su Keqing actually said that she did not sign up for the class after the results were out. She did not want to be the class monitor. Su Qing became the class monitor as she wished, but when she heard the results announced by Teacher Xiao Xiao, she was not happy at all. Su Keqing did not like it and did not want it, so it was her turn. The things that she, Su Qing, wanted should be fought for with her own dignity, not thrown to her like a piece of trash. Su Qing was very sullen as the class monitor. One of Gu Shengyin's fun every day was to see Su Qing suffer. 2 of her fun was to be a foodie deskmate. 3 of her fun was to tease a certain serious uncle. Perhaps because she was still young, Su Qing did not have many bad thoughts. Although she did not like Su Keqing, she did not hate her. And because Su Keqing's personality was too different from the plot, Su Qing did not have the chance to enter Su Keqing's heart. Gu Shengyin, on the other hand, was much more direct. She directly expressed her dislike for this classmate whose name was very similar to hers. Perhaps it was because her personality was too simple. If she liked someone, she liked them. If she didn't like them, she didn't like them. Her classmates all liked to be friends with her. Everyone understood why she didn't want to get close to Su Qing. According to Qing Qing's temperament, it would be strange if she liked Su Qing, who had the same name as her. On the third day of the Lunar New Year, Gu Shengyin made great progress in her mission. 2 years could really change many things. Su Keqing, for example, had changed from a delicate doll to a tall girl with delicate eyebrows. Her temperament was still as arrogant and willful, but more and more people were looking at her. Su Qing, for example, had always been gentle and kind. After being the class monitor for a few years, she had gained a good reputation in the class. However, the one who changed the most was the little fatty, Zhang Susu. Since he entered the third day of the Lunar New Year, no one knew what he ate or how he grew. His body suddenly lengthened rapidly, and the fat on his body disappeared. In just half a year, the little fatty had become a handsome and youthful teenager. At the age of 15 or 16, it was the time when love was first awakened. What's more, Zhang Susu had believed his father's words from the beginning and had some feelings for Gu Shengyin. Chapter 445. Gu Shengyin could sense the change in her deskmate. Zhang Susu's attitude towards her was no longer as natural as before. Sometimes he would stammer when he spoke. Gu Shengyin could feel him sneaking glances at her when she was doing her homework. Sometimes he would blush when he looked at her. The attractiveness of Su Keqing's body was undeniable. Moreover, she had been spoiled by He Junyan too much. The luxurious life she led made her look even more arrogant, just like a little princess who lived high up in an ivory tower. Such a girl was fatally attractive to adolescent boys. Zhang Susu was a very good boy. This was the conclusion that Gu Shengyin came to after being deskmates with him for more than 2 years. Looking at his daily habits and dressing, Gu Shengyin could tell that her deskmate came from a wealthy family. However, she could not see any of the bad habits of a rich family's son. He was not arrogant in the slightest, whether it was towards Gu Shengyin or other classmates. Before he lost weight, Zhang Susu's popularity in Class 1 was surprisingly good. Now that he had become a handsome guy, it was even more obvious. It was obvious that he had feelings for Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin had really treated him as a friend for the past 2 years. It was because she had taken him to heart that she did not want to see him fall deeper and deeper. She was destined to only give her heart to that person. Why should she give others unrealistic hope? When Zhang Susu finally could not help but confess to her, Gu Shengyin firmly rejected him. Zhang Susu was obviously hurt. Gu Shengyin did not leave any room for negotiation. "I'm sorry. I've always treated you as my best friend. I don't have any siblings. I've always treated you like my older brother." Her eyes were very sincere. Zhang Susu stared at her for a long time in a daze. Finally he smiled. He reached out his hand and rubbed the girl's hair. He smiled and said, "Sai, I, Zhang Susu, am also a handsome guy. I didn't expect that I would be such a failure in love. My first confession was rejected so coldly. Forget it. Even if I can't be your boyfriend, I can still be your big brother. If I have a girl who's the campus belle, I'll be proud to tell others, right? But today, you have to comfort my wounded heart. Treat me to a meal." Zhang Susu looked at her casually. Gu Shengyin smiled and said, "All right, what do you want to eat? Just say the word." Zhang Susu also laughed. "I know you're a rich woman. I have to take advantage of you." There wasn't much awkwardness between the two of them as they walked forward while talking. After the two of them left, a figure in white appeared at the originally empty corner of the stairs. Su Qing looked in the direction where the two of them had left. She had bitten her lower lip so hard that it had lost its color. He really did like her. Su Qing felt the imbalance in her heart rising higher and higher, almost unable to suppress it. Why was it that she, Su Keqing, was able to easily obtain something that she had never been able to obtain? She was even able to discard it like it was a pair of worn-out shoes. Su Keqing was better looking than her, had a better family background than her, and was more popular than her. Su Qing admitted all these. But why was it that the first boy she liked also liked Su-Kaching? Su-Kaching, Su-Kaching, everything was Su-Kaching. If only Su-Kaching had never existed in this world. Chapter 446. Gu Shengyin didn't return home on time after school today. He Junyan didn't see the figure that greeted him the moment he got home from work. He didn't know what to feel. He called the chauffeur who had gone to pick up Gu Shengyin to ask about the situation. Miss said that she's going to treat her classmates to dinner, so she won't be coming home for the time being. Classmates? What classmates? Alarm bells rang in He Junyan's heart. This was the first time that Qingqing hadn't returned home on time for dinner. The chauffeur merely said that he wasn't sure either. At night, Gu Shengyin returned home in a good mood. He Junyan wasn't in the living room. She looked at the time. It wasn't even 8 o'clock yet. Uncle He would usually be in the living room watching the news at this time. Despite her doubts, she still prepared to return to her room. There was already someone in the room. Uncle He? Gu Shengyin was a little surprised. Ever since she had gotten older, He Junyan had rarely come to her room in order to avoid arousing suspicion. Although she was surprised, she was still very happy. He Junyan's face was tense. It was obvious that he wasn't in a good mood. He stared at Gu Shengyin, who had just entered the room. I heard from the chauffeur that you're treating your classmates to dinner tonight? Gu Shengyin didn't understand and nodded. Is it your desk mate Zhang Susu? Gu Shengyin nodded again. Looking at the outstanding young lady standing in front of him, He Junyan couldn't describe the feelings in his heart. She was like a treasure that had fallen into his hands. Over the past 5 years, he had polished her bit by bit until she was the most dazzling person she could be. Yes, she was so outstanding. There would definitely be many people with good taste who would like her. In the future, there would be even more people who would like her. Perhaps one day in the future, a strange man would snatch her away from him. From then on, she would be doted on and loved by others. Her life would have nothing to do with him. How could he tolerate something like that? As He Junyan thought of these possibilities, his eyes turned bloodshot. Uncle He, what's wrong? The little girl's worried voice pulled him back from his thoughts. He Junyan raised his head to look at Gu Shengyin, whose head had already grown to his chest. He couldn't help but blurt out, "Do you have someone you like?" The little girl seemed to be stunned for a moment, apparently caught off guard by this question. Then her face slowly blushed. This faint blush was distributed on her white jade-like skin, and it was astonishingly beautiful. He Junyan's heart sank. Looking at her, it was obvious that she had feelings for someone else. He Junyan could not describe what he was feeling at that moment. He felt as if half of his heart was being roasted over a fire, tormenting him unbearably. The other half of his heart was frozen in ice, so cold that it pierced his bones. I didn't raise you for you to fall in love early, Su-Kaching. This was the first time He Junyan had called her by her full name. You disappoint me. After saying this, He Junyan slammed the door and left without looking back, leaving Gu Shengyin standing in the room in a daze. Gu Shengyin was stunned. System, did he misunderstand something? The system replied, according to normal human thinking, He Junyan should think that the host likes Zhang Susu. Gu Shengyin said, he didn't give me a chance to explain myself. Moreover, looking at He Junyan's current state, it was obvious that he had no idea what kind of feelings he had for Su-Kaching. Even if Gu Shengyin confessed, it probably wouldn't end well. Chapter 447. He Junyan sat alone in the study. On the desktop of his computer was a document that his secretary had just sent over from overtime. He stared at it for a while, but he couldn't process a single word. His mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. Qingqing was so pretty and delicate. There must be a lot of young boys who had their eyes on her. His Qingqing was only 15 years old. Her ability to distinguish between right and wrong was not strong enough. What if she got cheated? While he was thinking about this, he had completely forgotten that when he was 15 years old, he was already able to study abroad on his own. No, I have to take precautions. I can't let anything happen to Qingqing. He Junyan quickly made a decision. The next morning, Gu Shengyin watched in bewilderment as a certain uncle returned to his usual self. Did he think things through so quickly? Gu Shengyin asked the system. The system didn't understand. Ching, I'll have Sister May send you to and from school every day. If you go out in the future, Sister May will follow you, Heroine said. Gu Xingyin was a little unhappy. I'm already 15, Uncle He. I'm not a 5-year-old child anymore. Heroine's expression was extremely gentle. In Uncle He's eyes, my Ching will always be a child who will never grow up. This two-faced man always knew what kind of tricks the child he raised would fall for. Sure enough, after hearing his words, Gu Xingyin didn't say anything else, although she was still a little unhappy. Then came the important part. Ching, listen to me. You're still young and not suitable for a relationship. Moreover, you're still a student. You should focus on your studies. Puppy love never ends well. Heroine guided her patiently. Gu Xingyin was amused. She looked at Heroine in confusion. Ching isn't in puppy love. Heroine was stunned. Didn't you go on a date with your desk mate Zhang Susu yesterday? Gu Xingyin shook her head. Zhang Susu is my older brother now. He's not my boyfriend. Heroine. Then why did you blush when I asked you that question yesterday? His mood instantly improved. Gu Xingyin was amused when she saw the man's spirited look. The intimate atmosphere between the two of them was once again restored. Su Qing began to approach Gu Xingyin. Just like in the plot, she took the initiative to approach Gu Xingyin. She invited her to do some school things with her and shared some interesting things or unimportant little secrets with her. However, Gu Xingyin was not as cooperative as she had expected. Their relationship was only average. Ching, Haruko said that she knows of a particularly fun place. Let's go have a look after school. The girl who spoke was called Rose. She was the class commissary in charge of studies. She was a very lively and cheerful girl who could get along well with anyone. Gu Xingyin pretended to be in a difficult position and shook her head. I can't. Someone from my family will come and pick me up after school. Everyone in the class knew that Su Keqing came from a well-off family. Her family was strict and her chauffeur drove her to and from school every day. If it were any other time, Rose might not have forced her. However, she remembered Su Qing's words this time. Ching never plays with us. This time you must ask her to come. She grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand. Ching, that place is said to be a haunted house. It must be really fun. You've never played with us before. Let's go together. Chapter 448. Gu Xingyin seemed to be annoyed by her and nodded helplessly. After school, I'll tell my family that you guys will come with me, okay? Rose nodded excitedly. Okay. After school that day, other than Gu Xingyin, Su Qing, and Rose, there were 4 other girls who were quite interested in the haunted house. Zhang Susu had wanted to go with them when he heard that they were going to have fun, but Su Qing refused. We girls are going out to have fun. You're a boy, why are you joining us? Gu Xingyin walked out of the school gate and said to Sister May, who was waiting at the side, Sister May, I'm going to have some fun with my classmates. Let's have a meal together so I won't be going back with you. Sister May looked troubled. But Sir said, Gu Xingyin took her hand and said coquettishly, Sister May, I'll talk to Uncle He myself. You see, there are so many of us, nothing will happen. Sister May said helplessly, Okay, Miss, you must remember to come back early, or Sir will be worried. Gu Xingyin nodded quickly. After settling Sister May, Gu Xingyin gestured a victory sign to where the girls were standing and walked briskly towards them. Su Qing looked at her bright smile and thought of the place they were going to soon. She sneered in her heart. I don't know if you can still smile later. Gu Xingyin didn't miss the smile on Su Qing's face. She knew that Su Qing was up to no good, so she wanted to beat her at her own game. They got on the bus. Gu Xingyin really hadn't taken this bus before. Rose looked at her curious face and said exaggeratedly, Ching, you haven't even taken a bus before, have you? Gu Xingyin nodded. Many passengers on the bus had already noticed this girl who didn't fit in with the surrounding environment. A few young girls even looked at the brands she was wearing with shining eyes. If they were not mistaken, many of the clothes she was wearing were famous brands that often appeared in fashion weeks. Any one of them was worth several months of their salary. Hearing the conversation between the two of them, Many people were still thinking that it was probably the eldest daughter of a wealthy family who came out to experience life. The place Su Qing mentioned was really far away. They even changed buses and finally arrived at Su Qing's place after more than an hour. Heavens! Jinhua City actually has such a place? The girls all came from well-off families. At the very least, their parents were white-collar workers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to afford the expensive tuition fees of Gu Xingyin's elite school. Even the roads nearby were full of potholes. Low houses of different heights were everywhere, and some of them had even been demolished. No one had cleaned up the garbage around them. The whole place was dirty and messy. Immediately, two girls showed a look of disgust. They usually saw high-rise buildings. How could they know that such a place was hidden in a bustling international city? What is this place? Why don't we head back? Since they were already here, how could Su Qing let them go back? She hurriedly comforted them. We're not going in here. Don't forget what we're here for today. Follow me. After she finished speaking, she walked towards a place by herself. The girls looked at each other and chose to follow her. Gu Xingyin took out her phone from her bag, sent a text message to a number, and followed her. Chapter 449. Su Qing brought them to a place. This place was different from the previous place. That place was noisy and dirty, but this place was quiet. There was not even a trace of human habitation. This was a huge cement factory. It seemed that no one had been here for a long time. The whole place revealed a sense of vicissitudes and darkness, and the ground was covered with a thick layer of dust. The factory did not have a door. From the outside, it looked dark inside, and they could not see clearly what was inside. In the quiet environment, it was like a monster with its bloody mouth wide open, waiting for them to walk into the trap. Gu Xingyin looked around and thought that this place indeed had the potential to be a haunted house. Rose was full of confidence before, but she started to feel afraid before they even entered. She pulled Gu Xingyin's sleeve and said, "Qing Qing, why don't we not go in? It looks quite scary here." Gu Xingyin did not say anything. Su Qing smiled and took out a flashlight from her bag. "We are here to explore a haunted house. If it is not scary at all, how can it be called a haunted house?" The rest of the people also gathered their courage and took out the flashlights that they had prepared. "Yes, it is boring if it is not scary." Su Qing added faintly, "This used to be a very big garment factory. Later, it was said that there was an accident and several people died. Slowly, there were rumors of ghosts. It made people panic. Later, the boss went bankrupt and committed suicide. This place was deserted, and no one dared to buy this place. It has been abandoned." The sky was already dark, and a cold wind blew, as if in response to Su Qing's words, making the few of them shiver. Even the girl who was not afraid of the heavens and earth earlier had a timid look on her face. Gu Xingyin also cooperated and held Rose's arm tightly. Su Qing looked at their faces and was quite satisfied with the effect that she had caused. "Let's go." At this point, no matter what, they had to go in and take a look. The girls steeled their hearts, turned on their flashlights, and walked in. Gu Xingyin had already asked the system to check that there were no supernatural events in this place. Instead, the system told her that there were some fun things inside. The factory was bigger than they had imagined, and it was very dark inside. The area that the flashlight could illuminate was very small. All they could see was some abandoned equipment and materials. A girl complained, "It's nothing. I was happy for nothing." Before she could finish her sentence, the girl standing beside Gu Xingyin suddenly let out a shrill scream. Gu Xingyin found herself being hugged tightly. Everyone knew that in such an environment, people were the most susceptible to environmental contamination. The few of them were already very nervous. Now that they heard her shout, they immediately panicked. Some of the more timid ones also started screaming. They huddled together. Gu Xingyin was the calmest. She grabbed the girl and asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" The girl did not dare to raise her head. She just pointed in a direction and said, There's someone there. I saw a person in red just now." If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't find her way by herself, she would have run outside long ago. When she said that, everyone felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. A figure in red. This was a must for a supernatural story. Chapter 450. Gu Xingyin snapped, "Shut up, all of you." When she said this, she unconsciously carried a trace of her aura when she was Situ Jin, which successfully shut the girls up. "I want to see what can be here." Gu Xingyin did not hesitate to take the flashlight and shine it in the direction the girl said. 2 years passed. There was indeed a red shadow. "It's just a discarded piece of clothing." Gu Xingyin breathed a sigh of relief. That piece of clothing might have been used as a sample in the past. It was hung there straight, and with the bright red color, it was indeed scary in this environment. "Why don't we go back?" The girl who screamed earlier seemed to be scared out of her wits, and did not have the courage to continue. There were 2 others who also said that it was late, and they should go back. Gu Xingyin received a system prompt at this time. She glanced in the direction where Su Qing was and said, "I also think that this place is a bit strange, let's go back." Su Qing moved her mouth, as if she wanted to say something. At this time, in the darkness, there was suddenly a doo-doo sound, like the sound of high heels hitting the ground. There were no outsiders here except for the few of them. Where did this sound come from? The few of them were even more scared, and the timid one even cried softly in fear. In a place where no one could see, Su Qing's eyes lit up, and she said in a regretful tone, "Well, since you all said so, then let's go back." The few of them had just walked outside when a low female voice sounded in the darkness. "Don't go. Come and accompany me." This voice was very hoarse, like the sound of a pen rubbing on rough paper. It was annoying. However, the people present were not in the mood to consider whether the voice was good or not. No one knew who started it first, but the few of them scattered and ran outside. So this was Su Qing's purpose. Thanks to the system, Gu Xingyin could see that Su Qing was standing there calmly. There was no trace of fear on her face. Presumably, that voice was also designed by her, right? Gu Xingyin had more or less guessed what Su Qing's purpose was. Gu Xingyin pretended to run out in panic. Suddenly, a pair of hands stretched out from behind and grabbed her feet. At the same time, a sinister voice sounded, "Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. Come and accompany me," Gu Xingyin sneered. As expected, he was waiting for her here. If she was a normal girl, she might have fainted already. Gu Xingyin sneered. She lifted her leg and stomped on the hand. The man on the ground screamed. Ghosts can actually scream? Gu Xingyin was so surprised that he said something that made the ghost speechless. She really couldn't speak at this moment. Gu Xingyin didn't show any mercy when he kicked her. She even heard the sound of her own bones breaking. Gu Xingyin didn't stop. She panicked and ran out of the door. She ran out of the door and asked the system, "Did the others run out?" The system replied, "They've all gone out. Only Su Qing and her 2 friends are still inside." Gu Xingyin looked back at the dark factory and smiled coldly. "System, create some virtual scenes and let them have a taste of what it's like to be haunted by ghosts. Su Qing, I hope you'll be satisfied with this gift of mine." Chapter 451. "Qing, you're out too?" Someone called out to her from afar. Gu Xingyin walked over and saw 5 girls gathered together, waiting for her. They were obviously terrified, but they didn't leave. They were waiting for their friends who hadn't come out yet, which made Gu Xingyin feel a sense of warmth in her heart. "Is everyone okay?" Gu Xingyin asked. She glanced at them. Other than the timid girl who was still crying, everyone else was fine. Well, Su Qing's target was her. The others were at most frightened. "Qing, have you seen Haruko?" Rose asked. Gu Xingyin seemed to have just realized that someone was missing. She shook her head with a panicked expression. "No, I ran outside with you guys." Haruko wouldn't. She looked at the monster-like factory building in horror. Her expression was full of panic. "Is she still inside?" When the girls heard this, they recalled what had just happened and shuddered. Rose was about to cry when she heard this. She was the study committee member. At this moment, she felt that she should do something. She couldn't just leave her classmate inside. But if they were to go in again to look for her, looking at the girls' frightened expressions, even Rose didn't dare to go in again. Why don't we call the police? Gu Shengyin suggested. The girls snapped out of their daze. Yes. Call the police. Gu Shengyin took out her phone and called the police. Then she called He Junyan. She had actually sent a message to He Junyan earlier, saying that she was here and that if she forgot to call him at 8 o'clock, he could come here to pick her up. It was just 7 o'clock. He Junyan picked up the call. Ching. Uncle He. In order to act more convincing, Gu Shengyin started crying the moment she picked up the phone. He Junyan hadn't returned home yet. He was socializing outside. When he heard Gu Shengyin's crying, he panicked. What's wrong, Ching? I heard from Sister May that you went out to play with your classmates. Gu Shengyin only cared about crying and didn't say anything. He Junyan left the noisy area and asked directly, Where are you now? Uncle He will come and pick you up. Gu Shengyin gave him an address. He Junyan frowned when he heard this. Why would a few girls go to such a remote place? Be good and find a place to wait for Uncle. Keep your phone connected. Uncle will be here soon. He Junyan pushed open the door of the private room and simply excused himself, saying that he had something urgent to attend to. I say, Mr. He, that's not very kind of you. Everyone is having a good time. Some of the drunkards refused to give up. He Junyan suddenly looked straight at him. The pressure in his eyes made him lose his voice. Everyone, I'm really sorry. I really have something urgent to attend to today. I'll come back another day to ask for forgiveness. Everyone in the private room watched as he walked out of the door. On the other side, when they saw Gu Shengyin calling home, it was as if a certain valve had been turned on. The girls all took out their phones to call home. For a moment, there was a commotion of crying. Gu Shengyin understood them. After being frightened today, it was a good thing that they could cry. The few of them didn't dare to enter the factory again, but they also didn't dare to leave Su Qing alone. They could only watch from afar, hoping that Su Qing would run out on her own in the next moment. However, Gu Shengyin was determined to let Su Qing reap what she sowed this time. She instructed the system to treat her well. How could she let her out so easily? Chapter 452. Half an hour later, there was still no sign of Su Qing coming out. The girls' faces had already darkened. They had already imagined countless scenarios in their minds. Beep, beep. An ear-piercing sound was heard, and a blinding light shone on them. It was a police car. They had never thought that the police were so cute. They were overjoyed and quickly waved in the direction of the police car. The car stopped near them, and a few uniformed police officers got out of the car. Did you call the police? Rose nodded fiercely. Sir, we still have a classmate inside. Hurry up and save her. The police officer's face was grave. What happened? Rose forced herself to calm down and told them what had happened that day. When she mentioned the factory, she couldn't help but shiver. She looked at the police officer in front of her and pleaded, My classmate hasn't come out for more than half an hour. Hurry up and go see her. The police officer who asked the question was a young man in his 20s. He didn't believe in supernatural things at all and said, You're obviously scaring yourselves. How could there be a female ghost? Your classmate might have left long ago, right? Have you tried to contact her? Rose nodded. I called, but no one picked up. Okay, since you don't dare to go in, just stay here obediently. We'll go in and take a look. 4 policemen came. One of them stayed outside while the other 3 walked in with bright lights. Gu Shengyin had already asked the system to stop when the police arrived. It had been so long, and she had already taught them a lesson. Just as the police entered, another car came from behind. Gu Shengyin recognized it at a glance. It was He Junyan's car. Uncle He. He Junyan had just opened the car door when a figure jumped into his arms. He quickly pulled her away and looked her up and down. When he saw that Gu Shengyin was just a little panicked and was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief. What's wrong? What happened? When Gu Shengyin saw He Junyan, the delicate temperament she had cultivated all these years came out. Tears fell from her eyes and she hugged He Junyan's arm tightly, refusing to let go. But Uncle He is here. Don't be afraid. Be good. Tell me what happened. He Junyan allowed her to hug him and coax her in a gentle voice that he was used to. His expression was so gentle that water could drip from it. His appearance made the girls beside him stare blankly at him. They even forgot to be afraid. They all knew that Qingqing had an uncle who had a good relationship with her. She was even raised by him. All this time, the uncle in their minds was a middle-aged man with a benevolent face and a big belly. Who would have thought that he was such a young and handsome man? Sobbing, Gu Shengyin told He Junyan everything that had happened. He Junyan's expression turned serious. He had thought more than these young ladies. Of course, he didn't believe in ghosts. These girls were probably just scaring themselves. However, Qingqing clearly said that someone had grabbed her feet when she ran out. There were some problems in this. He Junyan lowered his gaze, concealing the cold glint that flashed across his eyes. He didn't say much and continued to gently comfort the little girl in his arms. There were some things that he should not tell her for the time being. Chapter 453. While the two of them were talking, the three policemen who had entered the warehouse had already come out. Gu Shengyin could tell at a glance that each of the three policemen was carrying a person on their backs. Wasn't the one in front being carried by the young policeman Su Qing? The few of them hurriedly ran over. Gu Shengyin also hurried over to the policeman's side. Su Qing, who was lying on the policeman's back, didn't seem to have any major problems. Her face was a little pale and her eyes were tightly shut. She seemed to have fainted. However, when they saw the people on the back of the two policemen, the few of them looked a little strange. They were also two girls. Their faces were smeared so messily that it was impossible to tell their faces and ages. Their long hair was loose and they were wearing loose dresses. The people present weren't stupid. Looking at their dressing and thinking about the ghosts they had encountered earlier, they were shocked and could roughly guess what was going on. The three policemen didn't look too good either. Originally, when they received a report from the girls saying that there was a ghost, they didn't take it seriously. However, from the looks of it now, there was indeed a ghost. It was just that this ghost was man-made. The leading policeman looked at the few of them. He had originally planned to ask them to go to the police station to make a statement. Gu Shengyin tugged at He Junyan's sleeve and said softly, "Uncle He, I want to go home." He Junyan patted her head comfortingly and said to the policeman, "Officer comrade, I think they were all scared out of their wits today. These few." He pointed at the three people who were still unconscious. "It's best to bring them to the hospital for a checkup. They look quite serious. Can I take my child home first? Don't worry, tomorrow, I will personally send her to the police station to cooperate with you." This was originally against the rules. When the young policeman heard this, he frowned and was about to say something when the older policeman patted him on the shoulder. "No problem, no problem. We will send the others home first. Mr. He, you can just take this young lady home first. However, we will have to trouble Mr. He to make a trip tomorrow." He Junyan nodded at the few of them and got into the car with Gu Shengyin. As for the remaining girls, those whose parents came over were picked up by them, while the rest were sent home. He Junyan brought Gu Shengyin home. After they got out of the car, Gu Shengyin stuck close to He Junyan, tugging on his sleeve and not daring to leave his side. He Junyan was both heartbroken and amused. "That's all you've got, and you dare to go to a haunted house to explore, Gu Shengyin looked aggrieved. "I didn't want to go, but they insisted on dragging me along." He Junyan's face hardened. "Speaking of which, I haven't settled the score with you yet. You lied to me about going out for dinner with a few classmates? You're old now, aren't you? You've learned how to lie to me." Gu Shengyin looked at him pitifully. "I was wrong, really. Uncle He, I was wrong. I won't lie to you anymore. I'll report everything to you in advance." Her attitude was unbelievably sincere. He Junyan guessed that the young lady was really scared this time. "It's good to learn a lesson," he said hatefully. Seeing the obvious tiredness on Gu Shengyin's face, he patted her head. "Go take a bath and relax. Rest early. I'll call your teacher and ask for leave for you." Gu Shengyin rolled her eyes internally. She had to ask for leave for such a small matter. If she was really that old, she would be spoiled to the heavens. Chapter 454. After saying goodbye to Gu Shengyin, He Junyan returned to his room. However, less than an hour later, there was a knock on his door. He Junyan raised his eyebrows. Only a certain young lady would disturb him at this hour. Sure enough, He-Junyan got up and opened the door to see Gu Shengyin standing pitifully at the door, hugging a pillow. She was wearing white pajamas and her hair was slightly messy. She looked like a timid rabbit. Before he could speak, the young lady looked at him pitifully. "Uncle He, I'm so scared that I can't sleep," He-Junyan sighed. He realized that he really didn't know what to do with her. He stepped aside to let her in and closed the door. He-Junyan looked at her helplessly. "Don't we already know that there are no ghosts?" Gu Shengyin only looked at him pitifully. "But I'm just scared. I'm so scared that I can't sleep." He-Junyan got up. "Then I'll take you back to your room and watch you fall asleep, okay?" Gu Shengyin thought for a moment and nodded. The two of them went to Gu Shengyin's room. Gu Shengyin lay back on the bed while He-Junyan sat beside her and read a book. However, half an hour later, Gu Shengyin's eyes were still wide open. He-Junyan got up and turned off the lights helplessly. Gu Shengyin let out a short scream. "Uncle He, don't go." He-Junyan sat on the edge of her bed and quickly reached out to hold her down. "Uncle He won't go. Uncle He will stay here with you." He was just afraid that she wouldn't be able to sleep with the lights on. He felt the young lady slowly calm down after hearing his words and let out a sigh of relief. Uncle He, I was really scared to death today." After a while, when He-Junyan thought that she had fallen asleep, the young lady on the bed suddenly spoke. He-Junyan patiently coaxed her gently. "It's all in the past. It's all fake. Uncle He is by your side. Ching, don't be afraid." Gu Shengyin continued, "At that time, I was thinking, what if I suddenly died? Uncle He must be very sad, right?" He-Junyan's heart shrank when he heard the word death. Without thinking, he said sternly, "Don't say such inauspicious things." He seemed to realize that his tone was too harsh, so he softened his voice. "With Uncle He around, no one dares to bully Ching. Gu Shengyin nodded. She reached out a hand from under the blanket and grabbed He-Junyan's hand. "I can't bear to do that either. I don't want Uncle He to have another Ching by his side and then forget about me." He-Junyan could not help but laugh. "That won't happen. Ching is one of a kind. Uncle He guarantees that Ching is the only one." Gu Shengyin closed her eyes in satisfaction. He-Junyan could feel the breathing of the person in the room getting lighter and lighter. He called out softly, "Ching?" There was no response. He wanted to get up and leave, but he found that his hand was tightly held in her hand. Her hand that was grabbing his was so small and soft compared to his own. He-Junyan suddenly remembered that young lady from back then. That was the first time she had taken the initiative to get close to him. At that time she was still so small. When he sat down, she only reached his chest. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. He-Junyan sighed and gently pulled Gu Shengyin's hand away. He covered her with the blanket and walked out. Chapter 455. Gu Shengyin slept soundly. When she woke up in the morning, it was already 9 o'clock. After washing up and changing her clothes, she went downstairs and saw He-Junyan sitting in the living room. "Good morning, Uncle He." Then she saw Sister May and said coquettishly, "Sister May, you didn't wake me up today." He-Junyan smiled faintly. "I told her not to wake you up. You're sleeping so soundly. Breakfast is still warm. Hurry up and finish it. We still have to go to the police station." Gu Shengyin nodded. When the two of them arrived at the police station, they found that 2 other girls had also arrived. Gu Shengyin was called in alone to record her statement. When she came out, Rose pulled her aside and said worriedly, "I wonder how Haruko is doing?" Gu Shengyin said, "She should be fine. Didn't she say that she was just a little frightened?" Rose was still worried. "I asked the police. They didn't say anything." She glanced at Gu Shengyin again and suddenly said in a low voice, "When I came out of the bathroom earlier, I heard 2 policemen chatting. They said that someone deliberately led us to the haunted house this time." She looked scared. "Luckily, we had more people and called the police in time. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened." The next day, the police called and said that the truth was out. They asked the people involved to go and find out more. The class teacher, Li Xiaoxiao, went with them. Surprisingly, they were not asked to go to the police station. Instead, they went to the hospital. What did you say? You mean that this haunting incident was planned by my student? Or the class teacher, Su Qing, who had always been obedient and good in her eyes? Teacher Li couldn't accept it. The police looked at the class teacher with pity. One of her students planned such an incident to hurt other students. As the class teacher, she was in big trouble. Moreover, according to the confessions of those people, they didn't just do it as a prank. It was a real crime. How could Haruko be such a person? Rose couldn't believe it. This incident was planned by Su Qing. Her goal was to deal with Qingqing? Rose thought that she must be hallucinating. I want to go in and ask her myself. Gu Shengyin, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. The others followed him into the ward. In order to make it easier to guard, the three of them were arranged to be in the same ward. When the door opened, everyone in the room shrank back as if they had been frightened. Gu Shengyin glanced at the three of them. Their faces were pale and their eyes were red. Not bad. It seemed that the system was indeed very powerful. The system replied, "Thank you for your compliment, host. My virtual reality simulation technique is enough to make them unforgettable." Rose looked at the policeman behind her in confusion. What's wrong with them? According to the police, the three of them were there to scare her, but from the looks of it, the three of them were the ones who were overreacting. The policeman smiled helplessly. We don't know either. When the three of them woke up, they kept shouting that there was a ghost. No matter what we said, it was useless. They insisted that it was their retribution for harming others. We didn't even interrogate them, but they confessed everything. He pointed at the three of them. It's better to give them a sedative. Otherwise, the three of them look like they're about to go crazy. Su Qing had been staring at Gu Shengyin since she entered the ward. Chapter 456. Su Keqing, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been jealous of you. I shouldn't have tried to harm you. I was really wrong. I admit my mistake, she said incoherently to Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin seemed to be frightened by her behavior. She took a step back helplessly and a hand supported her from behind. It was He Junyan. At this moment, among the few people who had been guarding the bed, a well-dressed middle-aged man and woman walked up to Gu Shengyin. This must be Su Keqing, right? I'm Su Qing's mother. I'm really sorry about what happened to Qing this time. The woman looked to be in her 30s. Her well-maintained face was deeply apologetic. We're all classmates. Can you forgive our Qing? The woman looked at Gu Shengyin eagerly. She listened to her daughter. This incident was actually targeted at this girl. If this girl named Su Keqing didn't take it to heart, the subsequent incident wouldn't be so serious. From the moment Su Keqing entered the room, she had been sizing her up. This girl's clothes and accessories were out of the ordinary. Her eyes were filled with arrogance. One look and she could tell that she was a pampered young lady who grew up being pampered by her family. This kind of girl was the easiest to soften her heart. He Junyan frowned and pulled Su Keqing behind him. He said coldly to Su Qing's mother, "Madam, we're all parents. I can understand that you're thinking of your daughter. But as Su Keqing's guardian, I can't tolerate other people harboring evil intentions on her. Let's get to the bottom of this first. What did your daughter intend to do to our Qing? Su Qing's mother looked at her daughter worriedly. They had been guarding her the whole night. Su Qing had basically said everything she wanted to say. This was what Su Qing's mother was thinking. From another perspective, if someone had wanted to do that to her daughter, she would have fought them to the death. How could she forgive them? Sure enough, when He Junyan found out that Su Qing had only wanted to scare Su Keqing out of jealousy, and had even wanted to tear her clothes and ruin her innocence, his handsome face could only be described as dark clouds. You don't have to apologize. I have no reason to forgive this. He Junyan looked coldly at Su Qing's parents, who seemed to be ashamed. What should we do? That's it. We've seen them. We'll leave first. He nodded at the two policemen and left with Gu Shengyin. The other girls and teacher Li Xiaoxiao who stayed in the ward were shocked. They knew that it was Su Qing's doing and comforted themselves that it was just a girl's prank and that she meant no harms done. However, no one would have thought that behind this prank, there was actually such a malicious intention. and what they had seen to have been so provoked had toozes, ss des haves have, ace and her, s and her, and if this. It was a pity that they would never be able to find out. Uncle he, my hand hurts. Gu Xingyin shouted with a frown. He Junyan loosened his grip on Gu Xingyin's hand, but he still held it tightly. It was as if he was afraid that if he let go, something would happen to his precious treasure that he had raised. He was really scared now. What if that girl named Su Qing had gotten her way? What would happen to his Qing Qing? He didn't dare to think of that possibility at all. He was afraid that he would go crazy if he thought of it. Chapter 457. Uncle He. Gu Xingyin was a little puzzled. Just as they arrived at the parking lot, the man who had been pulling her forward suddenly stopped and hugged her tightly in his arms. She could sense the man's uneasiness, so she obediently let him hug her. But this place was not considered remote. There were already a few passers-by looking at them curiously. Thank goodness you're fine, He Junyan said in a low voice. Gu Xingyin comforted him this time. I'll be fine. Uncle He, don't forget that I'm trained. He Junyan was amused by her. Yes, I know. My Qingqing is the best. Although he said that, he was already thinking about what kind of bodyguards he should find for Qingqing. After all, Su Qing was a minor. She did not cause any substantial harm to Su Keqing, so she was only sentenced to half a year of detention. However, the school would definitely not accept such a student again. In the end, Su Qing was expelled from school. The reason given by the school was that she had taken a leave of absence due to illness. The homeroom teacher, Teacher Li, also forbade the students from discussing this topic. Many students were concerned about the class monitor, but they could not get through to Su Qing's phone number and could not contact her. No one knew where she was. The only ones who knew the truth were the 6 girls who went on the adventure together. However, the homeroom teacher, Teacher Li, talked to them one by one and told them not to casually talk about this in school. Time passed by day. When Gu Xingyin turned 15, she finally graduated from junior high school and was about to enter senior high school. To He Junyan, this news wasn't very pleasant. Gu Xingyin attended a 4-person elite school. The difference was that she could attend day school in junior high school, but she had to stay on campus in senior high school. Ever since Gu Xingyin came to the He family at the age of 10, the longest time she had been apart from He Junyan was when he went on a business trip. Now, it would be an entire month before they could see each other again. He Junyan snapped out of his daze and laughed inwardly at himself. He was so used to being a stay-at-home dad that he could not bear to part with her for a month. On Gu Xingyin's 15th birthday, which was a week before high school started, He Junyan held a small birthday party for her. Instead of inviting his business partners, he invited Gu Xingyin's good friends and classmates. Wow. Qingqing, I knew your family was rich, but I didn't expect you to be so rich. Rose said exaggeratedly. That's right, Qingqing, this little nouveau riche in the future, we have to exploit her well. The other girl who spoke was also one of the girls who went on the expedition together. Although that experience was frightening, it also gave them a sense of camaraderie, and they quickly became good friends. He Junyan did not make an appearance at the banquet for the youngsters. In this kind of situation, there were no parents around, so they could play freely. He even made an exception and allowed Gu Xingyin to drink some wine. Gu Xingyin decided to do something big while she was drunk. Otherwise, with He Junyan's slow personality, he would probably still be happily playing the role of dad. Youngsters were crazy when they played. By the time everything was over and Gu Xingyin instructed the butler to send her classmates home, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. He Junyan did not sleep. He was afraid that the youngsters would go crazy and he would not feel at ease until he saw it for himself. Chapter 458. Knock, knock, knock. Someone was knocking on his door. Before he could open the door, the person outside pushed the door open and walked in. He Junyan didn't even need to look to know that Gu Xingyin was drunk. She wouldn't have done something so impolite when she was sober. As expected, Gu Xingyin walked in with a bottle of wine in her arms and 2 glasses in her hands. The moment she walked in, He Junyan smelled the strong scent of alcohol. How much did you drink? little drunk cat. He Junyan just wanted to facepalm. Gu Shengyin just looked at him and giggled. Her steps were steady as she walked to the cabinet in the room. She poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to He Junyan. Uncle He, I'm so happy today. Come, let's have a toast. Before He Junyan could stop her, she had already picked up the glass in her hand and downed it in one gulp. He Junyan laughed. Red wine isn't meant to be drunk like that. Although he said that, he still downed the glass in his hand in one gulp. Gu Shengyin suddenly stared at him without blinking. Being stared at like that, He Junyan felt a strange feeling in his heart. Ching, is there something you need? Gu Shengyin nodded seriously. Uncle He, I have something important to tell you. Uncle He waited for her to say what it was, amused. In his eyes, the young lady was drunk. Not only were her cheeks as white as jade, but even the corners of her eyes were red. What could it be? She was probably just drunk talk. Gu Shengyin mysteriously took a step forward. The two of them were very close to each other. Her breath, mixed with the smell of alcohol, filled his territory. He Junyan suddenly felt his heart beat a little faster. Then he heard the young lady say, Uncle He, close your eyes. Don't move. He Junyan closed his eyes as he wished. He wanted to see what this little drunkard was going to do. After that, he felt a warm and soft touch on his lips. He Junyan instinctively stuck out his tongue and licked it. It was very soft and had a hint of red wine. It made him want to taste more. Wait a minute. He suddenly realized what this was. Opening his eyes, He Junyan took a step back as if he had been scalded. He couldn't tell what he was feeling. He looked at Gu Shengyin with an inexplicable expression and asked, Ching, what are you doing? Gu Shengyin's eyes were filled with this man. I'm kissing you. I like you, Uncle He. She pouted. You used to ask me if I had someone I liked. It's you. As if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head, He Junyan said sternly, Su Kaching, do you know what you are saying? My He Junyan is your uncle. When he said this, he was resolute and decisive, as if he was telling Gu Shengyin, but also warning himself. He realized that he didn't feel disgusted when the girl he raised kissed him. He even had the thought of delving deeper. This wasn't right. Gu Shengyin said clearly, I know you are my Uncle He. You raised me and I like you. We are not related by blood. Why can't we be together? He Junyan closed his eyes and pointed at the door. You are drunk, Ching. Get out of my room now. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to look to know that at this moment his little girl must be looking at him with her big watery eyes. That expression was one that he couldn't refuse. He was afraid that if he saw it he wouldn't be able to harden his heart. Chapter 459. Gu Shengyin looked at him sadly. Uncle He, you don't like Ching? He Junyan said coldly, I like Ching, but it's the kind of love an elder has for a younger generation, not the kind you want. Gu Shengyin stood still for a while. She was almost sober now, so she said slowly, All right, I'm sorry, Uncle He. Ching drank too much just now. Just treat it as me talking nonsense when I was drunk. He Junyan stood there, listening to Gu Shengyin's footsteps slowly walk away. The door closed, and the room returned to silence. He turned his head and looked at the empty room. Suddenly, he walked to the cabinet and picked up the wine that Gu Shengyin had placed on top of it. Without even using a wine glass, he took a big gulp of the wine. She's still young. She doesn't know what love is, and what love is between a man and a woman. He Junyan, she's still young. You're not young anymore. You can't bring her down this path of no return. That night, He Junyan did not sleep at all. Gu Shengyin, who was supposed to be awake the whole night, slept soundly instead. The next day, He Junyan was nowhere to be seen when she went downstairs. Gu Shengyin looked disappointed. She asked the busy person beside her, Sister May, where did Uncle He go? Sister May did not know what happened between the two of them, so she replied, Sir said that there's an important project in the company these few days. It's very urgent. He might have to work overtime, so he might not be back for the next few days. Gu Shengyin lowered her eyes. He was hiding from her. Once He Junyan disappeared, he disappeared for a week. He did not appear in front of Gu Shengyin even when she started school. Before Gu Shengyin left, he looked back repeatedly with every step he took, showing his reluctance and grievance vividly. Even Sister May secretly complained that Sir was too much. After all, Miss was about to start school. Even if he took the time to send her off, it would have been nice. However, the truth was, Gu Shengyin asked, "System, how was my performance just now?" The system said, "Very vivid." Gu Shengyin smiled proudly. "That's right. I know him best. He said that he doesn't care about me, but he's probably paying attention to me somewhere now." The system. Sure enough, less than 10 minutes after Gu Shengyin left, He Junyan appeared in front of Sister May. "Qing Qing left?" Mei Jia nodded and couldn't help but say, "Sir, it would be great if you could come earlier. Miss has been waiting for you for a long time. When I saw her leave, she was very uncomfortable." He Junyan said faintly, "I'm not meeting her now for her own good." Mei Jia was a little baffled when she heard this. Could it be that Miss and Sir had a quarrel? She shook her head. As an employee, it was better for her not to get too involved in the main family's affairs. What's more, Miss and Sir had been together for so many years. She had seen their feelings for each other. How could they be estranged so easily? Just watch, everything will be fine soon. Gu Shengyin was like a fish in water in her new class. She didn't know that her every move was being watched by a certain man. He Junyan looked at the photos. The girl in the photos was smiling like a flower and was talking intimately with a friend beside her. "You little heartless girl." He Junyan suddenly scolded as he watched. He was glad that Gu Shengyin's mood was not affected by what happened on the night of her birthday, but he also felt a little annoyed because of it. Looking at her, she didn't seem to care about what happened that day at all. As expected, those confessions were just nonsense said when she was drunk. To think that he took it so seriously. He felt an inexplicable sense of annoyance in his heart. Chapter 460. To Gu Shengyin, a month's time wasn't much. After completing so many missions, time didn't mean much to her. But to He Junyan it was different. This was the first time he had been away from Gu Shengyin for so long. Even though he had been paying attention to Gu Shengyin's movements, he couldn't help but wonder if Qing Qing was being bullied in a place I can't see. Would she have no one to talk to if she was wronged? Thinking of this, He Junyan wanted to grit his teeth. That heartless brat. It's been so long and he hasn't even called back. Is he really waiting for me, his uncle, to take the initiative to contact him? As a parent with authority, He Junyan would never do something like that. However, on Gu Shengyin's first holiday in high school, she walked out of school with a few friends and immediately saw that familiar car. "My family is here to pick me up. I'll get going first. Bye-bye." She happily ran to the car and shouted, "Uncle He." The little girl couldn't hide the surprise on her face. He Junyan reflexively revealed a gentle smile. Then, he quickly remembered something and said seriously, "I happen to have something to do near your school today. I remembered that you guys were on holiday, so I came to pick you up." Gu Xin snickered in her heart, but on the surface she said knowingly, "I know. It's on the way." This man really cared about his face. He Junyan looked at the smile on her face and gritted his teeth. "Let's go. Uncle will take you to eat first." The two of them arrived at one of the more famous restaurants in Jinhua City. He Junyan familiarly ordered Gu Shengyin's favorite dishes. Gu Shengyin propped up her chin and looked at this man without blinking. Sigh, other than being a little slow, this man was perfect in all other aspects. After He Junyan finished ordering, he saw that the little girl opposite him was looking at him. He couldn't help but smile and teased, "What's wrong? It's only been a month and you don't recognize Uncle He anymore?" Gu Shengyin stuck her tongue out mischievously. "I'm just saying that Uncle He is becoming more and more handsome." He Junyan glared at him. "You even dare to tease your uncle. You're really, Mr. He?" A pleasantly surprised voice came from behind them. Gu Shengyin looked behind her. It was a woman wearing an off-the-shoulder gown. The fitting cut of the gown accentuated her slender figure. She wore a pair of white high heels on her feet. Her hair was loosely tied up, and she had a generous temperament. She was a very beautiful woman. Gu Shengyin knew who she was. She was one of the many women who liked He Junyan. However, Su Keqing shouldn't have known. She looked at the woman in confusion and asked, "Uncle He, who is this?" He Junyan was at a loss for words. This woman was the daughter of a company in Jinhua City. The company's CEO had always admired He Junyan and had expressed his desire for a marriage alliance many times. However, He Junyan had always rejected him. The last time he was suddenly confessed to by Gu Shengyin, his heart was in a mess. In a daze, he actually thought of finding a woman to try this trick on. Coincidentally, the CEO had suggested that the two of them meet. He didn't refuse. But speaking of which, the two of them had only met once. He Junyan realized that he had no interest in her at all. However, this woman didn't seem to think that way. Chapter 461. Upon hearing Gu Shengyin's words, the woman instinctively looked over. The moment she laid eyes on Gu Shengyin, a trace of shock flashed across her eyes. This girl was so exquisite. Women's innate desire to compare made her unconsciously use her most critical gaze when dealing with outstanding members of the same sex. However, the woman helplessly realized that there was nothing she could find fault with this girl's facial features. Looking at how intimate she was with He Junyan, then looking at her age, the woman quickly realized who she was. She originally wanted to greet Gu Shengyin cordially. After all, it was said that He Junyan doted on this little princess very much. However, He Junyan's words made her dispel that thought. He Junyan said as if he was trying to hide something, "The eldest daughter of the Dingxing Group. I have worked with the CEO of the Dingxing Group before." He didn't even give a basic introduction. When he said this, his eyes were only on the girl opposite him, as if he was afraid that she would misunderstand. The woman suddenly felt unhappy. She felt that their meeting last time had been very pleasant, and there was even a possibility that they could have gone further. She felt that He Junyan was also very satisfied with her, but today he deliberately distanced himself from her so clearly. There could only be one reason. She looked at Gu Shengyin. She was indeed as pampered as the rumors said. He Junyan was probably afraid that this girl wouldn't be able to accept this at the moment. The woman suddenly laughed. "This must be Qingqing. I heard Junyan mention you before. You are indeed a beautiful little princess. I hope that we can get along well in the future." He Junyan frowned when he heard this. When did he and this woman become so close? To the extent that they were calling each other by their names? After all, her father was his senior, so He Junyan restrained himself from embarrassing her. Under such circumstances, it would be strange if Su Keqing didn't think too much. Gu Shengyin decided to throw a little tantrum. Who told you to attract some rotten peach blossoms outside?" Her face quickly fell and she looked straight at He Junyan. "Uncle He, what do you mean by getting along well in the future? Are you going to find me an aunt? I don't want it." The young lady's expression was unusually ugly. He Junyan could even see that her eyes were brimming with tears when she asked that question. He Junyan opened his mouth, but the woman beside him had already taken the opportunity to speak. Qingqing, why are you so insensible? Your uncle He is of age and he lacks someone who understands him well. Besides, you can have one more person who loves you, right?" Gu Shengyin's reaction was to get up and run outside. By the time He Junyan reacted, she had already run out. He stood up and was about to chase after her when he saw the woman still standing by the side. "Miss Tang, I thought my intentions were clear enough. I don't think the two of us are suitable for each other. I hope you won't say anything that will cause misunderstandings in the future," he said coldly and chased after Gu Shengyin. The woman was left standing there, dumbfounded. After a while, she stomped her feet and left. Gu Shengyin did not run far. When He Junyan ran out, he saw her squatting in a corner. "Qingqing." He walked over to her side. The girl stood up, revealing an expressionless face. He Junyan's heart skipped a beat. Qingqing had cried and laughed in front of him before, but she had never shown such a dead expression. Chapter 462. Qingqing, let me explain. He Junyan didn't know why, but when he saw Gu Shengyin like this, he actually panicked. "You don't have to explain anything to me, Uncle He." Gu Shengyin raised her head and said seriously, "Who you want to find and what kind of life you want to live is your own business. It has nothing to do with me. You've taken care of me for so many years in the He family. I'm already indebted to you. If I still want to tell you what to do with your life, I really don't know what's good for me. He Junyan frowned. Ching, what are you saying? Gu Xingyin smiled. It's the truth. I won't be willful anymore. I won't get in the way of Uncle He's matters anymore. He Junyan looked at Gu Xingyin and only felt anger burning in his heart. What did she mean by, his life has nothing to do with me? What did she mean by, I'm indebted to her for taking care of me? What did she mean by, I won't get in the way? This mouth that used to sweetly call him Uncle He, why would it spit out such heartless and cold words? How could he Junyan allow that? After she filled him with every little detail of his life, how could she act like nothing had happened? How could she just ignore him like that? Your mind is filled with impulsiveness right now. I won't talk to you anymore. Be good, let's go eat. Uncle will take you home after that. Gu Xingyin didn't want him to take her home with him. She had to force this man to see his heart clearly today. Uncle He, I'm no longer a child. I have my own consciousness and the right to choose my life. After I turn 18, I will take back what my parents left me and leave far away. I won't bother you or disturb your life anymore. Without a burden like me, you should be able to. When He Junyan heard the last part, his face darkened. He looked at Gu Xingyin coldly. After you turn 18, take the Su family's assets and leave? Leave far away? He grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand, opened the car door and threw her in. He sat in the driver's seat and drove all the way back to the villa. Sir and Miss, you're back. Sister May greeted them with a smile and saw He Junyan angrily grabbing Gu Xingyin and going upstairs. The door was slammed shut with a bang, causing Sister May to tremble. What was going on? Sir was clearly very happy when he went to pick up Mississippi. Sister May looked worriedly in the direction of the master bedroom on the second floor. Gu Xingyin was flung onto the bed by He Junyan. She could actually empathize with He Junyan now. No matter who it was, if a child that they had painstakingly raised for so many years said such selfish and rude words, they would be furious. Uncle He. She looked uneasily at the man with a terrifying aura in front of her. He Junyan had always been a gentle gentleman in front of Su Keqing. She had never seen such a scary side of He Junyan. He Junyan smiled coldly. Go on. Tell me all your plans for the future and what you want to do with me. If you don't want to have anything to do with me, then tell me all about it. A guilty look flashed across Gu Xingyin's face, but she seemed to have thought of something. She turned her face away stubbornly. That's right. Didn't my existence get in the way of your good fortune? When you get married and have children in the future, I'm afraid you can't wait to get rid of me as a burden. On the other hand, the more she spoke, the more confident she became. Originally, she was extremely guilty, but as she spoke, she began to cry. Chapter 463. He Junyan's anger was mostly dissipated by her cries. But there was still half of it left. He didn't comfort the girl who was crying. He just stood by the side and looked at her coldly. I didn't know that I, He Junyan, had been so devoted to you for so many years just to raise an ingrate like you. Gu Xingyin stared at him with wide eyes and said angrily, I'm not an ingrate. He Junyan said coldly, I raised you for so many years. The first thing you thought of was to leave the He family and leave me when you came of age. You told me. If that's not an ingrate, then what is? Gu Xingyin widened her eyes. You're the one who despises me for interrupting your life. He Junyan got angry when he heard her say that. He pulled her up from the bed and they were very close to each other. He gritted his teeth and said, When did I say that you were interrupting my life? When did I despise you? Su Keqing, do you even have a heart? Haven't I treated you well enough? Do you not trust me that much? Gu Xingyin was a little confused. But you don't like me. You'll have to marry a wife and have your own children in the future. Then you won't think that way. I'll meet someone else and spend the rest of my life with him. She couldn't say the rest of her words because He Junyan suddenly bent down and nibbled on her lips. This was the second time He Junyan kissed her, but it was the first time he followed his heart and sucked on this little mouth that kept saying things that he loved and hated. He adopted Su Keqing when he was 23 years old. 5 years had passed and he had never had a woman by his side. So this was what kissing felt like. Hee Junyin closed his eyes and tightened his arms around her waist, pulling her closer to him. His tongue pried open Gu Shengyin's lips and teeth and invited her to indulge in it with him. Gu Shengyin didn't understand why he was suddenly enlightened. But before she could figure it out, she was kissed into a daze by him. She clearly had the memories of every world, so why was this man's kissing technique even more familiar than hers? By the time Hee Junyin finally let go of her reluctantly, the woman in his arms had a pair of sparkling eyes and her red lips were tender and alluring. "Su Keqing, you provoked me first," Hee Junyin suddenly said. Gu Shengyin seemed to be in a daze as she looked at her blankly. Hee Junyin's voice sounded like he was gritting his teeth. "You made me lose interest in other women. You made me have feelings for the child I raised with my own hands. Su Keqing, I, Hee Junyin, admit defeat. Since you have the guts to provoke me, you should be prepared to bear the consequences." Gu Shengyin's face turned red as soon as he heard his words. "Uncle Hee, you mean you like me too?" By the time she asked the last question, her face was already filled with joy. Su Keqing had been spoiled too much by Hee Junyin. There was no reason for her to beat around the bush to get what she wanted. Hee Junyin looked at her excited expression and sighed. She had considered too little. She had dared to confess without hesitation based on her feelings. He only hoped that she wouldn't regret it in the future. Hee Junyin looked at her seriously. "Qingqing, Uncle He will ask you one last time. You are still young. Being with me may not be as wonderful as you think it is. Perhaps you will meet a man who will move your heart even more in the future. If you really decide to be with me, then Uncle He will not give you the chance to regret it." Chapter 464. Gu Shengyin's answer was to tiptoe and kiss him gently on the lips. Although she looked shy, she was more determined and full of admiration for the person in front of her. "Uncle He, I know you think I'm young and immature. I can't prove anything to you now. I, Su Keqing, only know that after my parents left, Uncle He was the person who doted on me the most and treated me the best in the world. He was also the person I liked the most and wanted to be with for the rest of my life." Hee Junyin was moved. Gu Shengyin continued, "As for whether I regret it or not, the word regret does not exist in my dictionary. Sister May found that after only one night, the originally stiff atmosphere of the gentleman and the young lady had returned to their former state. No, Sister May felt that the relationship between the two of them was different from before. It seemed that Mr. Li doted on Miss even more. Although it still felt strange, Sister May was very happy. She had been worried for the whole night, afraid that there would be a gap between Mr. Li and Mississippi. Sure enough, they had such a good relationship. How could they be estranged? Gu Shengyin heaved a sigh of relief after the two of them talked things out. However, for the two of them who had just established their relationship, the short high school holidays were really short. "Uncle He, I can't bear to leave you." Gu Shengyin hugged Hee Junyin's arm and acted coquettishly. "She had to go to school tomorrow." Hee Junyin pinched her nose. "You're acting coquettishly again. You're getting worse." Gu Shengyin giggled. "Children who are pampered don't grow up. With Uncle He pampering me, I'm not afraid." She glanced around. Seeing that there was no one around, she quickly stretched her neck and kissed Hee Junyin on the cheek. Hee Junyin wanted to chide her, but when he saw her secretly happy and secretive expression, he laughed first. The two of them were so sweet, but they didn't want their actions to be seen by others. Su Qing's eyes widened and she covered her mouth as she watched this unbelievable scene. So, Su Keqing and her uncle had such a relationship? After the two of them left, Su Qing stood up. The past half a year had been quite miserable for her. Being detained for half a year wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the nightmares that followed him like a shadow. She still couldn't imagine what had happened that night in the factory. She had only wanted to use that rumor to teach Su Keqing a lesson. Who knew that she would attract the real, those things? For this reason, Su Qing even began to believe in Buddhism. Every day before going to bed, she would recite Buddhist scriptures for at least half an hour to calm her mind. Fortunately, after coming out, Su Qing's family had some connections and spent some money to send her to another school. None of the new teachers and classmates knew about her, and they were all very enthusiastic about her. She could be considered to have started a new life. She had thought that she, her previous school, and Su Keqing would no longer have anything to do with her. Who would have thought that she would run into this by chance? Su Qing was a little excited. Many thoughts ran through her mind. Su Keqing's surname was Su, but she clearly called that person Uncle He. She and that man were not uncle and nephew at all. Then, she thought about what she had seen today and the news about students hooking up with rich men that was often reported on the internet. Su Qing felt that she seemed to have discovered something incredible. After all, she had been frightened earlier. Su Qing only secretly remembered this matter in her heart. Once again, she looked in the direction where there was no one, and slowly walked in the opposite direction. Chapter 465. In the blink of an eye, another 3 years had passed. Qing, you're going to be an adult soon. He Junyan hugged Gu Xingyin and whispered into her ear. Gu Xingyin could feel the hot breath beside her ear. She understood the meaning behind the man's words. Once she was an adult and fattened up, she would be ready to eat. She didn't find it strange that her lover had needs for her. However, this man was amazing to be able to hold himself back for so long. The 31-year-old man was in the prime of his life. The impulsiveness of his youth had faded away, and his entire person was exuding an elegant charm. Gu Xingyin turned around and sized this man up. He didn't look old. He had changed into casual clothes and appeared on campus. People would even mistake him for a classy senior. What are you looking at? He Junyan saw her staring at him without blinking. Gu Xingyin raised her hand and wrapped it around his neck. She smiled proudly. I'm thinking, how did I manage to ensnare such an outstanding man? I Su Keqing am so lucky. She Gu Xingyin was also so lucky. He Junyan lowered his head and gazed deeply at her. No, Qing, I'm the lucky one to have met you. This silly girl only had eyes for himself. Didn't she realize that as she grew older, her exquisite facial features would fully develop and there would be more and more gazes on her body? Yes, it must be a gift from the heavens for us to meet. Gu Xingyin meant what he said. The fact that she was created, the fact that she could meet her lover during the mission, and the fact that she could meet him again and again in the reincarnation cycle was really a blessing from the heavens. When it's your coming-of-age ceremony, I'll give you a big present. Gu Xingyin threw herself into his arms and whispered into his ear. He Junyan's eyes were full of smiles. Yes, I'll be waiting for you, Qing. Gu Xingyin's birthday was during the holidays after the college entrance exams. They would have a long and sweet vacation. However, there were people who didn't want them to have an easy time. A week before the college entrance examination, a large number of anonymous posts appeared on the school forum. The contents of the posts were all the same. A certain tall, long-legged, fair-skinned, beautiful young lady from a good family background was actually a fake young lady. She had no blood relations with the wealthy bachelor from Jinhua City who was said to be her guardian. The post didn't say anything about the girl, but it just so happened that it attracted people's attention. She had fair skin, a beautiful face, and a good family background. She even had a close guardian. The only thing missing from the post was Gu Xingyin's name. Regardless of whether this post was true or not, if it was really an 18-year-old girl who was facing the college entrance examination, she would definitely be in a terrible fix because of this. It would definitely have a huge impact on her future exams. The sinister intentions of the person behind this were obvious. Is it Su Qing? The first person that came to Gu Xingyin's mind was Su Qing. After all, as Su Keqing, she had been staying in school for the past few years and had no enemies at all. The only person who could have a grudge against her was Su Qing. Moreover, Gu Xingyin had learned from the system that Su Qing knew about her relationship with He Junyan. The system denied it this time. It's not Su Qing. The person behind this was beyond Gu Xingyin's expectations. It was actually the young lady from a certain corporation whom she had only met once and had never heard of again. Chapter 466. Gu Xingyin checked and found out that the woman had no evidence at all when she posted the post. She said that the two of them had an unusual relationship, but she was just spouting nonsense. Her goal was to disgust Gu Xingyin and make her fail the college entrance examination. Gu Xingyin was silent for a while after she found out. Then, she said to the system, "I remember that I only met her once, right?" The system nodded. "Yes, the only time we met was 3 years ago, and we didn't get along." Gu Xingyin couldn't believe it. "So she has been holding a grudge against me until now? And she wants to ruin me during the college entrance exam?" After she said this, she laughed to herself. She carefully sorted out her thoughts and helplessly found that the unhappiness between the two of them seemed to be caused by a certain man. She clicked on the forum again and found that it was indeed exploding. Mengmeng de Li Zi, no way, I see her usually delicate appearance. She's actually that kind of person. She's really good at pretending. Jiangwei Hua Zue, don't talk nonsense if you don't know. I've been classmates with her for 6 years. Look at her temperament and upbringing. She's originally a pampered young lady. Only she knows the intentions of the person who posted this. Gu Yunke, I agree with the person above. Temperament can't lie. Hua Hua, hee hee, there's a bunch of people above. Don't tell me they're the water army sent by someone? Filthy Li Wuxin, I'm just a bystander who doesn't know the truth. Please tell me, who is this post talking about? Gu Xingyin casually glanced at the posts. There were all kinds of people who were watching a show and mocking her. However, most of them were just passing by. After all, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this post was fake. She sorted out her thoughts and was about to reply when she suddenly saw an anonymous post. Unlike the previous posts that blindly slandered her, this post was very detailed. From the girl's family to her relationship with her so-called guardian, their daily intimate interactions, and so on. In the end, the poster even said that she had seen the girl kissing her so-called guardian with her own eyes. The poster even attached a photo. There was no clear face in it, but most people who were familiar with her could still recognize her. When this post came out, it really caused an uproar in the forum. Unlike the groundless accusations above, this post was completely based on facts, and the key point was that she had a picture of herself. Sister likes to eat meat. Fuck, I was so sure that everything was fake. So there's a big move behind the scenes? Su, that's impossible. She's definitely not someone who's anonymous. If you have the guts, come out openly. What's the point of hiding and slandering others? Blurry Rabbit, Mummy, the water in school is so deep. I want to go home. When Gu Xingyin saw this post, he deleted the reply that he was editing. Different opponents should have different ways of responding. That's right. The second anonymous post was posted by Su Qing. After all, she had stayed in the junior high school for a few years. Of course, she paid attention to the forum. When she accidentally opened it today and saw the full screen of posts, she could tell at a glance that the person in the post was Su Keqing. Chapter 467. She had always kept in mind what she had seen a few years ago. But the haunted factory had really scared her. She didn't know why, but Su Qing felt that nothing good would happen to her whenever she met Su Keqing. So, she had always buried that incident in her heart until she saw this post today. Su Qing thought that this was a gift from God for her to take revenge on Su Keqing. There were so many posts on the forum. If she secretly attached one of them, she would definitely not be discovered. If Su Keqing wanted to investigate, the first person she would find would be the person who started the post. Moreover, Su Qing and Su Keqing had not interacted for 3 years. Su Keqing would definitely not think of her. Unfortunately, her idea was good, but she didn't know that Gu Xingyin had the system. The other person who posted the post looked at Su Qing's anonymous post and turned pale. Lei Tingting didn't expect that she would hit the nail on the head. She just wanted to teach Su Keqing a lesson to vent her anger from being humiliated that year. She felt disgusted at the thought of He Junyan having that kind of relationship with the adopted Su Keqing. On the other hand, she looked at the post happily. Su Keqing, let's see if you can still focus on your college entrance exams after such a big thing happened. Many people who guessed the identity of the person in the post were waiting for Gu Xingyin to respond. Unfortunately, they were disappointed. Gu Xingyin acted as if she didn't see the post. She ate her meals and studied as usual. She didn't seem to be affected at all. Could it be that she didn't know about this at all? Those who knew her wanted to tell her, but how could they say it? There were a few popular posts on the forum, and the main character seemed to be you? She didn't even mention a name. Moreover, the school was full of students. Most of them had pure minds. They felt that it was a good thing that Gu Shengyin didn't know about this. At least her mood wouldn't be affected and she wouldn't fail the college entrance exams. Thus, while Su Qing and Lei Tingting were waiting anxiously, Gu Shengyin calmly finished her college entrance exams. She wasn't affected at all. When Gu Shengyin finally, coincidentally, found out about this matter, the popularity had almost died down, and most people were focusing on the results. That's how humans are. If it's something that has nothing to do with me, I'll just watch the show when I'm interested. After that, I'll do whatever I want. It has nothing to do with me. At this moment, He Junyin also found out about the school forum. Why didn't you tell me? He bit her lips as if punishing her. Gu Shengyin looked at him angrily, as if she was dissatisfied with his behavior. After hearing his words, she casually said, "It's not a big deal. Besides, the post is right. You and I have that kind of relationship." He Junyin's expression was serious. Of course it's different. You and I are in love with each other, and we are in a serious relationship. You, Su Keqing, are the eldest daughter of the Su family with a net worth of hundreds of millions. Although I, He Junyin, have a modest net worth, I can't afford to keep you as a mistress. How could he allow someone to tarnish the reputation of the girl he treated like a treasure? Gu Shengyin burst out laughing. She really didn't care about this. That night, a certain school forum was attacked by an unknown hacker. All the posts were deleted, and the entire forum was wiped clean. Because Gu Shengyin's incident had happened a long time ago, and the hacker's attack was large-scale, no one connected it to her. Just like that, this matter sank to the bottom of the ocean. Chapter 468. Gu Shengyin's coming-of-age ceremony at the age of 18 was very grand. He Junyin had put in a lot of effort to give her a perfect birthday party. He wanted everything to be the best. Today, in front of all the guests, I, He Junyin, as Miss Su Keqing's guardian, will return everything that belongs to Miss Su Keqing in perfect condition under everyone's witness, He Junyin said after his speech. Many of the people present had already understood what he meant. Most of the people present knew Su Keqing's identity. Many of them were even good friends of Su Keqing's parents. These people were very gratified by He Junyin's actions. However, there were some people who had other intentions who were truly surprised. They had previously discussed in private that the Su couple had entrusted their daughter and their family assets to someone else. It was no different from sending a piece of delicious meat to the mouth of a wild beast for him to keep. Most likely it would be a one-way trip. They didn't expect He Junyin to be such a gentleman. He Junyin had a lawyer behind him. He signed a thick stack of documents and handed them to Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin looked through them carefully one by one and signed her name. She could have chosen not to look at them and chosen to believe He Junyin. However, she saw how serious this man was. If she really did that, she wouldn't be trusting this man. Instead, she would be letting down his painstaking efforts. He Junyin had purposely handed over the Su family's assets to her in front of all the business leaders in Jinhua City. This was to tell everyone that the real head of the Su family was back. Of course, Gu Shengyin couldn't treat this lightly. However, there was more than one unexpected thing that happened today. After Gu Shengyin signed the documents, all the guests stood up and applauded. Suddenly, the lights in the hall dimmed. The light pink lights looked especially dreamy in such an environment. Just as everyone was wondering what had happened, He Junyin suddenly took out a small box from his pocket. Gu Shengyin instantly understood what he was going to do. Although they had been married for a long time, she couldn't help but cover her mouth in surprise. In front of everyone, He Junyin knelt down on one knee before Gu Shengyin and opened the gift box in his hand. An exquisite diamond ring shone brilliantly under the light. Today, in front of all the guests, I have an even more important matter that I have yet to mention. He looked at Gu Shengyin seriously, his eyes full of affection. "Qing, will you marry me?" Some of the women couldn't help but exclaim. Everyone was stunned by this turn of events. What kind of development was this? If they didn't hear wrongly, President He was Miss Sue's guardian, right? Those conspiracy theorists thought that they instantly understood what Hee Junyin was thinking. So that was the case. No wonder he handed over the Sue Group's shares so readily. It turned out that he had a backup plan. Brilliant, truly brilliant. Even the eldest daughter of the Sue family had become Hee Junyin's. Would the Sue family be far away? Gu Shengyin and Hee Junyin couldn't care less about what other people thought. At this moment, they only had each other in their eyes. Gu Shengyin couldn't stop smiling as she extended her hand to Hee Junyin. "I'm willing." "How romantic!" a girl shouted excitedly and took the lead in clapping her hands. The guests snapped back to their senses. No matter what they were thinking, they all smiled and gave their blessings to the couple. Chapter 469. Hee Junyin looked at her insincere expression and smiled. Gu Shengyin saw that he was neatly dressed in his home clothes and that there was a book on the bedside table. She knew that he was just teasing her. She immediately changed her expression. She frowned and tears welled up in her eyes. This change shocked Hee Junyin. He knew in his heart that Gu Shengyin was most likely faking it, but he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. He bent down and asked, "What's wrong, Qingqing?" Gu Shengyin's eyes were teary. "It hurts," guilt flashed across Hee Junyin's eyes. He knew that he had lost control last night. The girl in front of him was still very inexperienced. Unfortunately, the self-control that he was so proud of was nothing in front of Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin enjoyed the treatment of a queen. She washed up and dressed while Hee Junyin waited on her without complaint. After everything was done, she said coquettishly, "I'm so tired. I don't want to move." Hee Junyin didn't say another word and carried her down the stairs. He faced Sister May, who had just entered the room. Sister May had seen Hee Junyin propose to Gu Shengyin with her own eyes last night. At that time, she was really shocked. However, after one night, she thought it through. Anyway, Sir and Miss weren't related by blood. The two of them had always been so close. If they didn't get together like this, when Sir got married in the future, the bride might not be able to accept it. After all, she had watched Gu Shengyin grow up. Sister May naturally felt sorry for her more than others. She accepted this kind of thing without any hesitation. Now that she saw Hee Junyin carrying Gu Shengyin down the stairs, Sister May was experienced. How could she not know what had happened between the two of them? Sir was too anxious. Miss had just turned 18. Sister May gave Hee Junyin a reproachful look. Hee Junyin took the blame with a bitter smile. Who would have thought that it was actually the obedient girl in his arms who had seduced him last night? However, looking at the two of them now, no one would believe it. President He, just accept it. Gu Shengyin saw that Sister May did not show any difference, and she was happy in her heart. Although in the mission world, the only person she really cares about is her lover, Sister May has taken care of her for so many years. It is also a happy thing to be able to get her blessing. The two of them finished their breakfast sweetly. Anyone who saw them would feel their teeth ache. Sister May had already left the restaurant tactfully. When she left, she still had a gratified look on her face. The more Sir dotes on Miss, ah no, she will soon be Madam. The more relieved she felt. Gu Shengyin's college entrance examination results were released. Unsurprisingly, she ranked first. With her grades, she could get into any school in the country. However, under Hee Junyin's strong request, she still chose to study finance at a university in Jinhua City. One of them was close to home, and the two of them were at the peak of their love, so they couldn't bear to part. The other reason was that this school's finance major was one of the top in the country. It was not a disgrace to Gu Shengyin's grades. Everything went smoothly. The only accident happened when Gu Shengyin was in her third year of university. She found out that she was pregnant. Hence, the wedding that was originally planned after graduation was brought forward. For the first time, Gu Shengyin experienced what it felt like to get married with a baby. Chapter 470. Fortunately, Hee Junyin was fast enough to prevent her from holding a wedding while pregnant. Gu Shengyin took a leave of absence from school and stayed at home to be her fragile object. She was treated like a treasure by the overly nervous Hee Junyin and sister Mei every day. How was Su Qing doing at this time? She had taken a year off from school because she was detained, so she was 1 year younger than Gu Shengyin and the rest. Gu Shengyin didn't forget the kindness of the forum posts back then. She didn't repay it then because it wasn't the right time. The second year after Gu Shengyin's college entrance examination, which was also the year of Su Qing's college entrance examination. A week before the college entrance examination, Su Qing's school forum was flooded with posts. There was only one content. Su Qing from grade 12 class 1 had been detained for half a year for deliberately murdering a classmate. In just one night, Su Qing's life had undergone an earth-shattering change. Her boyfriend of a year broke up with her because he couldn't accept that his other half was a vicious girl. Whether walking on the streets or in school, people were pointing at her, their eyes full of surprise, disdain, and even fear. Her father's promotion was also blown. The originally foolproof transfer was suddenly removed because her father had raised a daughter who had been in prison, and the higher-ups doubted his ability. However, no matter how hard she tried, no one could find out who posted these posts, even if they were extremely skilled hackers. What followed was a night of nightmares. Su Qing seemed to have returned to those days. She didn't dare to close her eyes at all. Once she did, those things would follow her like a shadow, making her unable to sleep every night. She didn't sleep well for a whole week. In such a state, her college entrance examination results were imaginable. It was a mess. Su Qing almost went crazy. In the end, she went to a third-rate school. What Gu Shengyin had done was just to return what she had done to him in its entirety. Their lives were destined to never cross again in the future. As for Ms. Lei Tingting, Gu Shengyin also sent a small gift. On the eve of her engagement, Ms. Lei Tingting's fiancé received an anonymous email. In those photos, Lei Tingting, the noble and generous young lady, was participating in various parties abroad. Those gatherings were very messy. Striptease and one-night stands were all child's play. There were even. Gu Shengyin was not in the mood to pay attention to what happened next. He only knew that Lei Tingting's fiancé broke off the engagement with her. Although the photos were not released to the public for the sake of the two families, Lei Tingting's reputation was spread among the upper class. At the very least, no other young master would dare to marry such a woman. During the first snowfall of winter, Gu Shengyin gave birth to a daughter safely in the hospital. Hee Junyin was a man in his 30s. He was so happy that he almost cried as he held the baby in his arms. "Qing, look, this is our little baby." He sat beside Gu Shengyin and looked at the woman and the baby. His wife was sleeping peacefully on the bed, a satisfied and happy smile on her tired face. Beside her was the baby, who was sleeping soundly with her fingers sucked. He was at peace and leaned over to plant a kiss on each of their faces. These were the two most important women in his life. Chapter 471. This was an extremely beautiful place. Every green leaf seemed to twinkle with a lustrous light, and every flower was always in its most blossoming state. This was the pure land of the fantasy continent, the place where the elves resided, Starlight Forest. There was a person lying on a swing made of intertwined starlight flowers, taking a nap. Her long, snow-white skirt extended from the swing and fell to the ground. If one looked closely, the skirt was embroidered with countless starlight flowers using silver thread. When the wind blew, it was as if endless starlight was falling. Looking up, the first thing that came into view was a head of light green hair that was lazily scattered. The top of her head was bound by a gorgeous and exquisite starlight flower crown. When one looked up, it was as if even the wind had stopped breathing. This was an indescribably beautiful face. It was a beauty that even the poets of the magical continent couldn't describe with words of praise. It was a charm that the sculptors couldn't capture no matter how meticulous they were. Suddenly, those long eyelashes trembled slightly, and the owner sitting on the swing slowly opened her eyes. At this moment, the plants around her seemed to have sensed something and instantly bloomed enthusiastically. "Your Majesty, you're awake? Your Majesty, what a pair of beautiful eyes they were." The light green pupils were like the clearest and most flawless jade pools, containing endless vitality and vitality. The owner of those eyes was the ruler of the fantasy continent's starlight forest, the queen of the elves, Helena. Gu Shengyin gently raised her hand with a smile, and a light green halo rose from her palm. Then, it turned into specks of starlight that fell on the surrounding plants. Those plants that had received the gift of nature magic from the elven queen bowed to Gu Shengyin in gratitude. Gu Shengyin sorted out the memories that the system had just transmitted to her. Elven Queen Helena, the first elf born from the elven mother tree, the sacred object of the elves. She was born in her adult form and was the most powerful guardian of the Starlight Forest. She was also one of the top powerhouses in the entire fantasy continent. She was the queen of the elven clan, who had incomparably powerful battle prowess. She was also recognized as the #1 beauty in the entire fantasy continent. However, such a powerful and beautiful elf queen was only a character that made people sigh with regret in a certain story. That story, to put it simply, was about a human girl who carried the protagonist aura. She had good luck all the way and activated countless cheats. In the end, she became a supreme master and had countless harems. In the process of her killing spree, one of her lovers was poisoned by the fire poison of Hell's lava. In the entire fantasy continent, only the elven race's holy tree, the elven mother tree, could cure her. In order to save her lover, she transformed herself and sneaked into the Starlight Forest. She got close to the youngest elder of the elf clan, Alan, and sneaked into the elf's sacred ground. In the end, she disappeared with the elf's sacred tree. She had left, but the entire elf clan had fallen into a great calamity. Alan knew that he had made a big mistake and was filled with remorse. He committed suicide in front of all the elves to apologize. The root of the elf clan was the elven mother tree. Without the elven mother tree, the entire Starlight Forest withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The elves also began to show different degrees of weakness and aging. The entire elf clan was in imminent danger. At this time, as the elven queen, Helena made a huge decision for the entire elf clan. Chapter 472. The elven queen was born from the elven mother tree after countless years of nurturing. She was the first elf between heaven and earth. As long as the fantasy magic continent was not destroyed, she would be an immortal existence. In a sense, she could replace the elven mother tree. Therefore, after Helena studied countless elven magic books, she prayed to the goddess of nature in the elven holy land and sacrificed herself to become the new elven mother tree. She saved the entire elven race and even the entire Starlight Forest, but gave up on herself. Gu Shengyin finished sorting out the plot and sighed to herself. In the original plot, the elven race did not have a good ending. Because of the elven queen, the entire elven race hated that human girl and even started a war that spread across the entire continent. However, no matter how strong the elven race was, they could not defeat someone with a protagonist aura. In the end, the entire elven race suffered heavy losses and had to seal the Starlight Forest to recover. When Gu Shengyin came to the elven queen, there were still 1,000 years before the birth of the protagonist aura girl, She Lily. System, she has the protagonist aura. Isn't she the protagonist of this world? Gu Shengyin asked with some doubt. The system's calm voice was somewhat disdainful. How could she be considered a protagonist? She just happened to obtain something that could forcefully steal the luck of others to replenish herself. That's why she was so lucky. Host, haven't you noticed that everyone who went against her ended up very miserably? That's because their luck was all stolen by her. The true children of fate are loved by the laws of the world. For example, the elven queen that Host lives in will not bring misfortune to others. On the contrary, the true protagonists will even benefit the people around them. Gu Shengyin nodded to express her understanding. Your Majesty, a new elf is about to be born in the Holy Land. A lithe female elf reported to Gu Shengyin with a smile. Gu Shengyin's expression froze. Calculating the time, Aliner, who was deceived by She Lily and ended up committing suicide, was born at this time. A smile appeared on her face. I'll go take a look. Our elf is finally coming out. Alinor's birth received the attention of the entire elven race because he was the second elf after Queen Helena to be born after 10,000 years of nurturing by the mother tree. All elves guessed that after he was born, he would definitely be an extremely powerful elf. When Gu Xingyin arrived at the elven sacred land, many elves who had heard about the elven mother tree's movements had already rushed over. Upon seeing Gu Xingyin, the elves all bowed to her. "Your Majesty!" Gu Xingyin nodded and walked to the front to look at the holy tree of the elves. Elves were born from the elven mother tree, and the potential of newborn elves was judged based on the length of time they were born. Elves were elves birth elves for ages for nurture? Of course, as the first elf in the fantasy continent, no one knew how long Gu Xingyin had been nurtured by the mother tree of the fairies. This little elf that had been nurtured for 10,000 years naturally received the blessings of all elves. The green radiance that had been lingering around the mother elven tree suddenly became unprecedentedly dazzling. The branches and leaves on her body gently trembled. On one of the branches, a huge flower bud slowly detached from the tree and fell to the ground. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.